Hey knitters! Thank you so much for your warm welcome back to the YouTube space. I am Aro of Aro Knits and Purls. As always, find my Ravelry, Instagram, Ko-Fi, Patreon linked in the description below, as well as links to any dyers, makers, and designers that I talk about in this episode. I have so much to talk about. It has been a crazy 3 weeks. I have a lot to talk about because I've been working on knitting a lot more. I've had a little bit more bandwidth in my life. So I think a lot of knitters talk about the preoccupation with productivity, and I try really intentionally, my neighbors are upstairs. Okay, I try really intentionally to not fall into that trap of feeling like a failure if I don't churn out a sweater every 2 weeks. But I have to admit, it feels really good when you do make a lot of stuff, because I have come to accept of myself that I am a product knitter. I care more about enjoying what I have made, in the final form, than I do the process of it. And the way I can think about that more easily is, those beautiful, really complex shawls and those optical illusion blankets that use double knitting, where you have the Mona Lisa on one side and then the Last Supper on the other. That stuff, the really fiddly, really gorgeous but very labor intensive stuff, if you like that, you are a process knitter. I am not. I like clean, easy, I like little details, and a lot of the pieces I make have great little details to keep me interested, but I don't want to fiddle. I think the British say they don't want to faff about, and that's how I feel. I don't want the fuss. No fuss. All that to say, yes, I have come to accept that of myself, but I do really like being productive as a result, and the last 3 weeks have been that. So if you guys will notice, I am wearing a new sweater. This is the Feather Sweater by, oh my God, the Knit Purl Girl. Remember, this is the one where I was like, who is it? And I couldn't remember. Knit Purl Girl. I almost fell into that trap again. But I think I showed you guys this when I had literally maybe an inch of the back done. As you can see, it is done. It uses thick needles, relatively thick needles. I think I used US 10 if I remember correctly. But I'm obsessed. The body shaping, I did this exactly to pattern. Usually I have to adjust a little bit in terms of length, in terms of the sleeves, but this one I followed it exactly to pattern, and I'm so glad I did. Usually if I'm body shaping, I'll just skip that, I'll just do a straight body. But with this one, it really is important, because the slight shape makes it a little bit more flattering and less just a dump of fabric. Because using the 2 strands of mohair I did, the 2 strands of mohair, well, actually one of them's mohair, the other one's a cashmere blend, linked in the description below, both by Moondrake Yarn Co. But using 2 lace weight yarns that are fuzzy makes a very light, airy fabric, but it falls differently than if you used a normal wool-based fiber. And what I mean by that is the way that the fabric hangs is going to be very different than with a full sweater, what we normally conceptualize as a knit sweater. So having that shape really helps guide that fabric into how it should fall on your body, which I think for me especially is just way more flattering than if I had it just straight down. And it is drop shoulders, you can see, top down, and I love this thing. It is so cute. I'm really glad that I did the pastel color, because I thought about doing something a little bit darker, a little bit more neutral, but no, I'm so glad I did the pastel. Your pastel girly is back. I feel this winter it's just been so gray that I kind of the weather and the colors outside were affecting my mood, which normally doesn't happen, but I was gravitating less towards the hot pinks and more towards the neutrals. And I think there's a time and place for all of them. I love all colors. As you can see, I have my dark moody, I have my light pinkies, I have my peaches, but there is something to be said about like going back to pastel because it just makes me happy. It just makes me happy. But yeah, like I think this pattern is really accessible to anybody, especially if you want to learn techniques like picking up stitches and doing a folded over collar. Actually, I didn't do a folded over collar. The pattern's not written for a folded over collar. You could, but I found that when I fold over like a lace like this, it like creates a weird like funnel neck. Has that happened to you guys? I don't know. But usually I find that like I don't like it on lace stuff anyway. I have managed it successfully without it being a weird shape. But anyway, I am digressing. This pattern by Knit Pro Girl, really, really good. I love this yarn. I'm actually gonna put in the description, I made a slight mistake. So Rochelle at Moondrake Fiber Co, she sent me like the yarn label and the contents, but she said that there was a typo in it, so the numbers were off. So I'm gonna put the corrections down below. But that base, the cashmere fuzzy base, it is going to be premiering for, you know, public purchase at Flock in Seattle this August. If you are able to go to Flock Fiber Festival, I highly encourage it. Jessica of Shop La Mercerie is the one who's arranging this. And like, I'm not being paid to talk about it at all. I'm so excited. So many of my friends are vending there and attending, and I'm really excited. So yeah, if you're able to attend, you'll be able to get this gorgeous cashmere base. And again, I'll have the contents written below because I cannot remember the numbers off the top of my head. Yeah, so things I have been working on. As you can guess from the title of the episode, I am scrap busting. And a lot of knitters talk about stash busting, and what that means is using up your stash as much as you can, right? The majority of my knitting life, you know, more than 10 years, I didn't really have a stash. I had at max maybe 5 sweater quantities, which is not a lot if you think about how far we've come. Started from the bottom, now we're here. So I've obviously gone beyond that. But anyway, all that to say, like, your stash can feel like a burden if you are not in love with it anymore. And the best way I think about it, you know, like I think I talked about it last episode, where it's a wine cellar. Sometimes you have different moods, so you need different yarns. Like these hot pinks, you know, this bright pink from the Wandering Flock is gonna be a very different mood than these darker colors, right? But I want it all because I contain multitudes like all of us, and I have different moods. So I want yarn to reflect that. All that to say, that's stash busting. What I'm talking about is scrap busting. When you just have little random skeins lying around, and if you are a garment knitter like me, or you've just been knitting for a long time, chances are you have a lot of scraps. And scraps, like what I think of scraps are like leftovers from previous projects, like this, just hanging out. But it can also mean like minis. A lot of people have just piles of minis because, I mean, they're cute, they're really cute. But also I think a lot of people, like a few years ago, Advents were really, really popular. And of course they still happen. And if you still like Advents, heck yeah, keep liking those Advents. But I feel like, especially for dyers, like it's gone a little bit back because it is really labor intensive. I'll tell you, like, I didn't know this, but yarn manufacturers, the ones that sell the undyed yarn to the dyers, they don't actually segment it out, or at least it was the last time I talked to my dyer friends about this. They don't segment it out into mini skeins. Like the dyers have to take the full skein and do it themselves, which is really labor intensive. And then if you think about winding up those little guys, and in Advents, it's like what, 25? Like 25 little mini skeins? Like it's just so labor intensive. So I think a lot of dyers have moved away from that kind of model. Again, there are plenty of dyers who still do that, and that's great. All power to them. If you still like them, heck yeah, support them, whatever. But for me personally, I don't see the appeal just because I end up with so many scraps as it is working on my garments that I I have like baskets and baskets of just random little tchotchke yarn balls that aren't full. So, and I don't like striped work. So I'm like, what do I do with them? So enter in. So this is the first square of my Stella Blanket by Laura Penrose. This is still in testing, but it is gonna come out soon. I know soon. So I've only done one square and it's going to be massive. I want it to be able to cover like a king size bed. And that's gonna take a lot of little squares. I will say the pattern itself is written for the squares, the full motif, to be massive. Like I'm talking like that big as opposed to the one I did. And I chose to make it smaller because when I think about a quilt, I think about like those cute little squares, you know, and like, I think it's adorable. And I think when it's on a smaller scale, you get more of that replicated quilt idea, image, whatever. I have obviously done like a color coordinated one. And the reason I call it scrap busting is I am doing a different color square each one. So I'm gonna have a green motif one, blue, pink, a heck of a lot of pink, gold. There's gonna be a lot of different ones and I'm really excited because it creates this really cohesive look and it's fun. You can easily put them down like when you're in the middle of it because what you're doing is just creating basically little triangles and meeting in the middle. You can see like these ridge areas of the squares. That's where you pick up stitches. And there are a couple ways to pick up that are a little bit trickier than others, but really it is very fun, quick. And because there's so little squares, like you get this like sense of, you know, imagined productivity where you're like, oh, I already did a square in like X amount of time. I can do 3 more, that's fine. And like it makes you feel like you're accomplishing a lot in less time than, you know, you would a full garment. And I'm really excited about this because I love the look of quilts, but I have recognized in myself that I will never be a quilter. Like you guys know, I'm a little bit loosey-goosey about a lot of things, including gauge. But anyway, so if I don't even really like to check my gauge, imagine me trying to cut little squares for a quilt. And by imagine me, I mean don't imagine me because I will not be doing it. And that's just my personal preference. I love girlies who can quilt. I wish I could be them, but I will not. So this is as close as I get. And like I said, scrap busting, it's so good. This is DK weight, but a lot of these are fingering weight because I just tend to have more scraps from fingering weight projects. So I held the fingering weight double, and where I did have DK, I just used that by itself. And like really, I love it. The back is a little bit messier. I could do it neater, I think, but I'm one of those people where it's like, who's gonna flip it over? Like, I don't care. I'm not gonna flip it over. So the side you can see, I think is very cute. And I'm really excited to continue making these. And like I said, it's just fun when you're like between projects and you're like, oh, I wanna knit, but I don't know what to knit. This is really easy to start working on. And like I said, it's also really easy to put down because it's just each individual square. So you just stop picking up and let it hang out for a while. So yeah, so that's one really fun way to scrap bust. Obviously there are a ton of other little blanket projects you could do. Laura Penrose has a couple I can think of, or you could just do, you know, a striped scrap blanket. If you want to crochet, you can crochet, but I am not the girl to talk to about crocheting. I am famously bad at crocheting. I can do a chain. I learned how to double crochet once, but that has since left my brain. So yeah, you can crochet if you can, or you want to learn. Awesome. I encourage you to. I will not be that. And then another way I'm using up scraps is this new test knit for twin knits, and it's called the Big Boat pullover. Big Boat. Again, linked in the description. It's in the description below. I know it's Big Boat something by Twin Knits, and I am so in love. I've actually set aside 3 more patterns or 3 more sweater quantity to make with it, but this is the Big Boat. So by boat, it's like the boat neck, it's just wide. And what I love about this is the construction / how quick it is. So it has the same technique as a raglan, but only on the sides. So what the sides look like, if I can, yeah, stretch it out. So it's like a raglan. You just make one left, make one right, all the way down to the sleeve separation, or rather knitting down, because it's a drop shoulder. I love drop shoulders these days if they are chopped down. I do not like bottom up. But instead of doing like increase one round, then knit, increase one round, then knit, this is just increase every single round until you hit the count you're supposed to get. And then you just knit flat, down, and then pick up. And this moves so quick. The secret to it knitting up so quickly, one is the ease of it. You're not doing shaping other than the make one right, make one left. And you're using like a really airy yarn, and you are using thick needles. Like, let me show you these chunky boys. Take off my knit stopper. So these are US 13s. I should have looked up the millimeters before. Oh yeah, 9 millimeters. So they're thick. They're thick. This pattern uses 3 strands of mohair held together. And if you are a mohair girly or a Surrey girly like I am, you have a ton of them just lying around. Like, I was just able to use up so much of my scrap stash just combining colors. Obviously, as you might guess, I had a lot of pastel more than any other shade, but I do have other options. And I'll talk about those in a second. But the way these colors blend creates this fabric. And I love how shiny it is. That's the benefit of using mohair. You know, I talked about it last episode. I'll talk about it every episode. I love mohair because of the shine. It makes it almost glitter in the light, which just makes me so happy. You can combine any other colors that you want. You could do more high contrast. The sample that they posted in their photo on Instagram, go check out them on Instagram, linked in the description below. You can do higher contrast, you can do this kind of blend like I did, but the way mohair interacts, like I said, it's just really lovely. It's very cohesive, and I'm just obsessed. If you saw me fiddling with the needle stoppers, so I have recently become obsessed with needle stoppers. And that's because I knit a lot, I carry around projects a lot. Like, when I go to work, I never get a chance to knit at work. Even my lunches, I'm doing that sad lunch desk while working thing. It's so sad. Europeans probably won't understand it, but Americans are very depressed. And it's because we are miserable and work ourselves to death. Anyway, yeah, so I bring my knits around a lot. Even when I travel, I'll bring 3 projects, minimum. When I go to the office, I'll bring 2 projects, minimum. So because they're moving around a lot, stitches tend to slip off. And I have become obsessed with needle stoppers. So I've recently got a ton. All the ones I'm about to show you throughout the episode are from Little Larkspur Designs. She has an Etsy shop. I will link again in the description below. And I just think they're so cute. I'm trying to match them to the vibe of the project. So obviously these little pastel rainbows go perfectly with this pastel. And I love how it like basically became a peachy pink, which is, you know, the Pantone color of the year, but also one of my favorite shades. Like, this entire square is like peachy pinks. Yeah, it's a mood. So yeah, big boat blouse or sweater, whichever one it is. I'm obsessed. And the way it hangs, like, I can't wait to wear it for you guys, because the way it hangs, it's so flattering, like incredible, and so easy to make. I think it's very accessible for new knitters, because the only thing you are doing is increasing make one right, make one left, which is, you know, basic increase if you want to make really any project that involves getting bigger, whether that's a scarf, or I guess if you do. Anyway, you're gonna need it a lot. If you're a new knitter, you're gonna need that a lot. And so it's a good skill to have. And the fact that you only have to do it 2 times rather than the 4, and you do it every row, so you really get that practice. And the only other skill really is, you know, joining in the round and picking up stitches. It's really accessible. I highly recommend it. And you get to be really creative. Like, the next one I have planned, again with scraps, is this. So I'm gonna do like, oh gosh, if I can hold them. I'm gonna do like a dark, moodier version because like this is quite dark. And I really love this mohair. If I remember correctly, it's Ito Sensei, I wanna say. But this has like this deep rose gold silk middle, but then the gray fuzz around it. And like, that's what I mean. Like, it's just, mohair is beautiful. And this one has this light blue silk middle with the taupey gray fuzz. And I'm just obsessed. Like, I've had these in my stash just like hanging out for years, like literal years. All of these scraps pretty much are years old. The only thing that wasn't a scrap, I should have said, is this yarn. This is the mohair I showed you last time from Moondrake Fiber. I love this colorway, and I'm really glad I incorporated it all throughout the the big boat that I am doing right now, because it creates, when you have one color running throughout the whole thing rather than just like mismatching around, like when you have one color, it helps with the cohesion. Otherwise it would look more like stripes. And you know, if you love stripes, heck yeah. I don't. I like a cohesive look unless it's intentionally designed to be a striped sweater. So yeah, so I'm obsessed with this. It works up so quick. Guys, I'm about to finish. Like, I will finish tonight. Oh gosh. I'll finish tonight, and you know when I cast this on? 2 days ago? So today will be my 3rd day. Yeah, like it's a 3-day project. And even if you're a slow knitter, like add a couple days onto that, 5-day project, 1 week project. And I'm not saying we should all be obsessed with productivity, but there are some times where you need that like confidence boost that a finished project can give you. This is it. This is it. And US 13s, guys, or 9mm, because everywhere else does millimeters. But anyway, amazing, amazing design, really accessible, and just gorgeous to wear. So those are the 2 main ways I'm using up scraps. I see so many possibilities, and I'm really excited about incorporating more of my scraps into projects, because once I've started making that a goal, like I can see it everywhere, and it's really exciting. Yeah, and then I get to admire like my whole skeins just as they are, because I feel like it's artwork at this point. But yes, so the other projects I'm working on, because like I said, it's been a crazy couple weeks. This one is a new one. I don't think I've shown you guys. Like I cast on after the last episode, otherwise I would have shown you. But this is the Salted Caramel sweater by Nash Knits. And I am obsessed. First off, uses a lot of different techniques that I'm not used to. For this first color work bit on the front and back, I had to do color work knit flat, which I have not done, I don't think, ever. Yeah, I don't think I've ever done color work knit flat. And it was very interesting because obviously, like the way you read a color work chart, if you're in the round, is just you start at the same end every single time. It's kind of like reading a book, right? But when you're doing a color work chart that's knit flat, you start one end, then you go the other way. It's kind of like when you're using a typewriter, how it'll go, it's kind of like that. And it took my brain like a few tries to be like, why is this not looking right? Why is this wrong? And then my brain finally going, oh my God, I get it. So yeah, it was different for me. And then the most interesting like new technique was something called a tuck stitch. It creates this like ridge. And at first I wasn't sure if I was gonna like it, because when I saw it in photos, I was like, eh. But after I worked on it, I really like it. Like the way it frames the color work gives it like a rustic feel to it. And I don't know why I love it so much. The way it works is you basically knit like a few rows of stockinette, and then you pick up from like 3 rows below and knit together. So it creates like this extra bump of fabric because you're knitting together from a below level to create that little bump. And it's really fun, actually. Like I did not think I was gonna like it, either in how it looked or the construction, but I really enjoy the little bump stage. And of course, now that I've joined in the round, I will be, you know, doing color work in the normal round, which is exciting for me. I gotta say, I really, really like this. It's another drop shoulder, top down. I don't know what to say other than like, I love this. The yarns that I'm using are deep, deep stash. The main color is this yarn. It's from Panorama Fiber. And to show you how old this is, look how yellow this tag is. Tags don't come in sepia brown, they turn sepia brown. I got this at the Hill Country yarn crawl in 2015, 2016, which is now mind-bogglingly a long time ago. Oh my God. Yeah, so she doesn't dye anymore, and it's so sad because this colorway, Toasted Chestnut, is gorgeous. Like, I have no words to say other than it's completely gorgeous. And she doesn't dye anymore, and it's really, really sad. I think just with the pandemic and her family growing, she had to step away from dyeing, which is, you know, because she was really talented. Obviously, this colorway has been sitting in my stash for years because I wanted the perfect project for it. And I actually got it with the contrast color at the same time because when I saw them paired together, I was obsessed. The contrast color is actually a worsted weight, whereas the main color is DK weight. But the contrast color is Dream In Color, the classy cashmere base, so it has cashmere content, and it's the worsted, and it's the colorway Rabbit Ears, which is like the perfect, it's not white, it's not gray, it's kind of something in between, and it's really gorgeous. And I kind of want a whole sweater in this because I love the look of like just close to white sweaters without it being just plain white. But yeah, so I'm really excited to finish this. It moved quickly as well, and I think it helps because like mentally, the colorwork sections, once you finish that, you're like, oh my gosh, I've done so much. And then it gets you excited to do more. And I think that's the allure of the productivity idea in knitting. It just gives you that boost to keep making more, which I need sometimes. Sometimes I'm really motivated and happy to go through a slog and faff about, as they say. But sometimes I just really need that boost, and little things like this, the blanket square I showed you, like use whatever you need to. You know, if you don't want to knit, you don't want to knit. But if you mentally want to knit, but also can't make yourself, like doing little things definitely helps. So yeah, that's the Salted Caramel by Nash Knits. Really excited about it. It's kind of tough because the colorways are so autumnal and we're headed right into my favorite season, spring, which is not exactly this, you know, color tone. And I'm a very seasonal girl. I like the aesthetic to match everything. So I'm not sure when I will wear that except for this coming fall, but I digress. Another knit I'm working on, I showed you guys this last time, but I have made a lot of progress. Or I think I have made a lot of progress. So this is the Skyline Tee by Tori Knits. I showed this to you guys last time. Remember, I made the mod of one extra purl stitch between each like column. And I've blocked out the shoulders and I love it. Like, it's gonna be that perfect oversized tee that I love. Some people like their tees to be a lot closer fit. I have always been an oversized top girl. Like, I like to be comfy in the top area, so this is it for me. And so I've blocked part of it. Like, you can see where it stops being blocked. And I have blocked one sleeve, but not the other. Can you tell which one? Trick question. It's obviously this one. Like, it's a dumb question, not a trick question. It's obviously this one. Because you know how you can tell? It's that drape. It's the way that it can lay flat. I left this one unblocked, so I could talk about this really quick. Let me just get out my soapbox, stand on it, and preach. And I'm sure all of you, not all of you, I'm sure many of you already block your knits. I cannot stress the importance of blocking your knits. Like, and I left this as a visual aid so you could see. This, that drape, the way it lays is going to be how I want to wear it. This, when it's scrunched up, it doesn't bloom the way it needs to. These details that I've done don't show. And this is especially true for garments. You should block scarves. You should block shawls. definitely you should block garments. Hats, I'm like, it's okay. Generally speaking, I don't see the need to block a hat unless you want it to like look really like professional. Just like get it a little wet and lay it flat. Hats are easy. But when it's garments, like you really do need to let it relax. You need to let the fibers get used to the shape that you want them to be in. Otherwise, it's going to look just a little bit lumpy. And that can be because of the way the construction is. That can be like, these lumps are natural with knitting, but it's the addition of water really that helps relax it and take the shape you need it to. Because otherwise, like if I had left this entire design lumpy, like unblocked, you would not be able to tell that I had a shaping detail because these lovely little ridges wouldn't pop. Lace knitting, it's especially important to block. Like lace work looks completely different blocked than it does unblocked. Like you guys are gonna have to take my word for it. It is significantly different. And if you don't know what blocking is, you're probably like, well, what are you even talking about? Because I always try to keep in mind that there are new knitters who have found my channel. And if so, like, thanks for joining. Welcome to the community. It's a great space if you make it a great space for yourself. But yeah, if you don't know what blocking is, you need to wet your yarn. Like that's the most important thing. You don't need to drench it. Like oftentimes what I will do is I will lay my project flat on a blocking mat. You don't need a special blocking mat. You can go to like a kid's store and get like those little foam pads that they put in playrooms. When I was broke in college, I used the literal cardboard boxes. Like you don't have to get fancy. And then you just pin it out. For certain projects, you can just lay flat like scarves. I think you just wet it, lay it flat, it's good to go. But for garments, you do want to stretch it out and shape it a little bit more intentionally. So you should get like little pins. They sell them at Hobby Lobby, or if you don't want to be awful and shop at Hobby Lobby, no offense. Did you know that they like literally smuggled in antiquities from like places like Iraq and Afghanistan and whatever? Like they literally smuggled in antiquities against all kinds of laws and got in so much trouble for it. And this is the owners, but it's Hobby Lobby. Like it's crazy to me. Anyway, yeah, if you buy little pins from Michael's, or if you get knit blockers, which are special, like I should have brought mine over. But they're really handy to like space it out without having to worry about doing every little tiny one, because the way that regular pins work, if they're not the knit blockers and kind of go flush against the flat edge of the mat, with the little pins, what ends up happening is creates like a scallop edge. And if you want a scallop edge, great. But if you don't, it's not really the look you want, it's gonna affect it. So please block. I just used water, honestly. Like I'll pin it and then I'll do a little like exorcism with like just my hands and a cup of water, and I'll just do that to it until it's like properly wet, and I know it'll take that shape once it dries. You could do that, or you could do like what you're supposed to, use wool wash. And if you don't know what wool wash is, there are different kinds. So this one is wool soap. It's definitely better for natural fibers. Like if you use rustic yarns or anything like that, like you need to protect the lanolin. Lanolin is a natural organic material that coats animal fibers, and it helps like with the odor repelling properties of wool. It just protects the wool in general. So lanolin is really important. So that's why you should use it if you're doing really natural fibers. If you are not, or you use a blend, you'd use a lot of superwash like I do. There are little packets of wool soap or wool wash, whatever you want to use. It's interchangeable. It got really dark all of a sudden. They sell them in little individual packets. This is the scentless version. This is scented. There are a million kinds of different scents and a lot of different people who make wool wash. Woolberry Fiber Co, I know in her online shop, sells wool wash as well. So like you can do that, especially if you have like knits that need to be really washed and like smell eradicated. Yes, use a wool wash. But when you block, honestly, I found that water is just fine. And again, you don't need to get fancy with it. Cardboard box, a little bit of an exorcism, you're good. But you gotta do something. Otherwise, you're gonna end up with weird lumpy sleeve right here, you know? So sad, so sad. But yeah, so that's that's the Skyline Tee. And I'm not talking so much about the construction because you guys heard me talk about it last episode, but like it's a really fun construction. I'm using a very similar one for my next project that I'm gonna cast on. So this is the Lakes Tee, if you remember. And I've done the Lakes pullover, I've done the Lakes Tee. All the lakes are by Ozetta. If you need to hear me gush about Ozetta again, please refer to one of my earlier episodes. I think I call it the season of Ozetta. I'm obsessed with her and her designs. She's amazing. She's so talented. But anyway, all that to say, I'm working on a new test knit for her that's based on the lakes, but it's going to be a V-neck. And I love V-necks. I often go through like what I've already knit in my sweaters, you know, my sweater stash. And I try to always see like, what am I missing that I really want? I realize I need more V-necks. I want to wear them more often, but I don't really have that many. So I made it a point to be on the lookout for patterns that I like. And she announced the V-neck, the Lakes V-neck. And I was really excited because I love this construction. It's the same as the Skyline. You do the rectangles. You do the rectangles. Forgive me. Oh my God. You do the rectangles and then you like pick up edges and meet them. And I'm not explaining it well. Go watch the Ozetta video or the last video where I talk about the Skyline. It's a lot easier to understand when I'm not staring at my hanger on the ground. But yeah, so it'll be similar to this except a V-neck, and I am very excited because she offered yarn support for this test knit, and I don't often get to do test knits with yarn support. And what that means is the dyer or the yarn shop or company that she's working with gives you the yarn to make the test knit with. And this one I'm really excited about. So this is Isager. You European girlies will be very familiar. This is my first time actually using this mohair, and I'm beyond excited. I see this used in so many projects and I have never done it, and I've always wanted to. So this is 75% kid mohair, 25% silk. And this colorway is just, I think the 001. Oh, it's 0, color 0. Yeah. So, and it's not white. It's not like that beigey undyed, or not beigey. It's like a creamy undyed. This is almost gray, and it's gonna pair perfectly with the main color that you use, because obviously you hold it together all throughout, but it's going to be 2 strands of Saona. This is from Wooldreamers. They actually partnered with Ozetta to develop the colorways of this yarn base. So this colorway is actually called Ozetta, and I knew I wanted to use this for a really long time, but this is the first time I've ever gotten to. It is 50%, it's written in Italian, extra fine merino wool, or lana marina entrafina e manchega, which I'm assuming is extra fine merino wool, and 50% algodón de Andalusia. I think that's a specific type of sheep wool. You guys can read it for yourself, because I don't know if I'm even pronouncing that. I know I'm pronouncing Andalusia right. But yeah, anyway, you can see it's the colorway Ozetta. This, I think, is a fingering. So holding it double will be like a DK, and then holding it with the mohair will be around a heavy DK or worsted. Really excited about this. Like you can see, it has that natural rustic wool feel, but it's still soft. And you guys know I'm very sensitive to rustic wool. It often feels like those metal gray scrubbers on my skin if it's too rustic. But this, I think, is perfectly soft. And I really love the depth of color that you get from natural wool. Like you can see the specks of gray and tan, and even like the natural fibers that stick out. I'm really excited to use this. And really excited that it's the colorway Ozetta for an Ozetta pattern. So once I start working on this, I'm actually going to cast on probably after I finish my big boat today. But I will show you more of that once it starts going. And then I do have a lot of yarns that I wanted to show, but this episode is getting way too long. So let me quickly talk about just a sampling of the yarns I'm really excited about. And it's Woolberry. I realize a lot of my episodes these days, and I felt really self-conscious about it. It talks mainly about, you know, few core dyers. Wandering Flock, Woolberry, Explorer Knits, you know, and Moondrake. Like Canellia Fiber Company, oh my god. Yeah, so I tend to like go back to the same dyers. And I didn't used to be that way. I think I used to be much more of like, I want a new dyer every single time. But especially like after the pandemic or during the pandemic, I realized like I wanted to see yarns in person, because during the pandemic, we couldn't really go to yarn stores. So I just bought offline. And afterwards, when I really started looking at my curated collection, I realized there's a lot of yarns that I don't love. And that's not to say that they're bad. It's not to say that they, you know, are awful, whatever, not good quality. It's just the colorways look different on a screen than they do in person. And that's natural. It's really hard to capture what we see with our eyes and what is captured on a camera. And that can be lighting, screen brightness, whatever. There's a million different reasons. But it's really hard to buy yarn, which is so visual online, I've discovered. And that exists for even the dyers that I go back to again and again. But I figured out which dyers, oh God, it got so dark. I figured out which dyers over time, their colorways that I will go back to every single time. And like, I can tell the way they edit their photos, by the way they edit their photos, now that I'm used to seeing the actual product versus the photos, like I'm able to suss out what it looks like in person. And there's something to be said about like that predictability. I still like to find newer dyers. It's just harder for me to get myself to commit to buying a sweater quantity when I don't know what it'll look like. So when I was destashing a lot and very heavily, it's because I got a lot of yarns that weren't exactly what my heart wanted. So yeah, all that to say, like, I feel weird about like only talking about the same dyers, but it's just how I'm living these days. Like, I want to know that I'll love them. And it's easier to know that ahead of time when it's dyers that I've worked with a lot and I can predict what their colors will be in person. So I'm part of the Woolberry Collective, and that's like a special club where you pay a monthly fee, but you get to order a sweater quantity of whatever color that's in the collection. Honestly, like, you could do both colorways, you just have to pay extra for that. But as part of the collective, you get 10% discounts on almost every single one of her items in her shop, whether that's pre-order or not, as well as like the haberdashery, like the wool wash or needle stoppers, etc. And you also get free shipping, so that adds up. And a couple of the colorways that she's had in her collective, I am so happy I joined, incredibly happy I joined. This is one of them. This is called Fresh Eucalyptus. I think I've shown this to you guys last year, but she brought it back recently for her like Best of Woolberry pre-order, and I finally got mine and I'm obsessed. So last time I got it in DK, and this is it on Berry Cashmere, which is 80% extra fine superwash merino, 10% cashmere, and 10% recycled nylon. This is it on Berry Mohair, so that's 70% mohair, 30% silk. And I love it. I will say, like, Woolberry, Bethany, doesn't like mohair. She can't like have it on her skin really, so she didn't dye it for a really long time. But I don't know if I pestered her enough or we collectively pestered her enough. Last year she started doing mohair, and I have been over the moon. It's so pretty. Like, I love this colorway. It's actually very similar to this now that I look at it, but I've been in like this kind of like sage green minty mood. This is a little bit more neutral than what I'm wearing though, because this one is a little bit more sage, this one's more mint. But I am completely obsessed with this colorway. It's one of my absolute favorites. I'm sure she'll do another like Best of Woolberry pre-order, and if you do get the chance, I highly recommend Fresh Eucalyptus. It's gorgeous. And another colorway that was part of her collective, and again, these collective colorways are usually exclusive for quite a long time. Like you have to be part of the collective to get them. And then if she brings them back, like in the pre-order I just discussed, like you can get a chance then, but why risk it when you can join the collective? And she only opens it up like a couple times a year. So keep an eye out. If you follow her on Instagram, that's the best way to follow her, or her newsletter. But this colorway, you guys know I'm not a purple girly. I don't have a lot of purple at all. It's like one of the shades that I'm an absolute no-no on. But icy lavender gets me every time. This is called Sunday Lilacs, and I got it on Berry DK this time, which is 100% 100% fine superwash merino. Had to think about how to order that. And this one is again the Mohair, 70/30 Mohair and silk. And I am obsessed. I love an icy lavender. I think it's cute and pastel, very contemporary, and just cute. Like, come on, like it's just cute. I'm really excited to make something out of this. I'm trying to find like the perfect pattern, and I haven't found it yet, so I'm just gonna let it sit in my stash for a while and enjoy it because love it. But yeah, I will talk more about the other yarns I was planning on talking about, which makes sense because they're more warm weather knit yarns. So as the weather warms, it'll become more relevant. But yeah, this episode has gone a long time. I hope you guys weren't bored because I had a lot of fun talking about this. Like now that I'm looking around at the carnage I've left, I'm like, that was a lot. I did a pretty good job this past few weeks. So thank you for stopping in and listening to me ramble. I will see you guys next time very soon, I hope. Happy knitting, bye.